The first thing Democratic Party needs to say is, we fucked up.
2024 was a wake-up call for Democrats everywhere when a close election became an electoral rout. Today, we talk to former Miami Beach mayor, entrepreneur, and columnist Philip Levine, a rising star in the Democratic Party whose roadmap for a return to relevance has caught everyone's attention. His message: give Americans what they're looking for, not running from. From Ballard Studios in West Hollywood, California, it's 13th and Park.
You and I can differ, but that doesn't mean you and I cannot be friends.
That often is missing in politics.
We went from North Korea to M&M. That's a lot, man.
Aliens could have invaded and nothing would surprise me at this point.
It's a nightmare.
Those are the facts.
We have to solve everything.
What's in this tea?
Philip, I can see life is treating you very well. This is not what I would imagine to see behind every Democrat I'd be speaking with in the nation at this moment.
Adam, this is the problem. That's what Democrats don't understand. I'm in gorgeous Ocala, one of the most beautiful places in the state of Florida.
Right.
How many Democrats have really spent time here? And that's the key. Rural America. And that's what the Democrats have to get back to.
Well, you wrote an incredible piece recently for the Miami Herald. It's gotten a lot of talk around America, well beyond Florida, about kind of a prescription of what Democrats should do to return to what I call relevance.
I mean, what a debacle. But it was a debacle we all saw. You know, the best part about the catastrophe that just happened to the Democratic Party is it's going to allow for a rebirth, God willing. But I just love everybody that you see, from Morning Joe to this one to that one. I call them all hindsight heroes. All of a sudden, they have incredible hindsight, and they're hindsight heroes, right? And they're telling you what they shouldn't have done. Maybe they shouldn't have been allowing men to play in women's sports. And maybe they should have secured the border. Maybe, I don't know, capitalism is probably a good thing because, that's kind of what built the country and the universities and all the buildings. And maybe talking about socialism wasn't so smart after all. And then again, as we all know, that everybody that goes to one of these wonderfully democratically managed city, whether it's San Francisco, LA, Chicago, or New York, you're always thinking to yourself, am I going to get stabbed today? Adam, it goes on and on and on. But these are what I call the hindsight heroes, and going back to things that we knew already. So I believe it's time for the Democratic Party to maybe stop talking about Black America and stop talking about gay America and stop talking about Jewish America and Hispanic America. Let's just start talking about America and stop dividing everybody. And that's what the Democratic Party has continued to do. And they must stop it immediately, or they will become Blockbuster Video.
Are you hearing this from other Democratic friends of yours around the country?
Oh, there's no question you are. But what I do think, Adam, is, what do they call the death knell, the death rumble of when a person's about to,
right? Yes.
Yeah, it's a rattle when they're about to pass away. They still hang on to what, so you still hear the progressive, they're still talking, and maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe that wasn't the problem. Maybe they didn't go farther enough left. And of course, the best one is, she's a great candidate and maybe she can come back. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. She's going to come back. Sure. Okay. And we're going to have VHS tapes as well in the future, and cassettes, I mean, it was the wrong messenger. They had no message, but they had plenty of money. That's the only thing they did have.
What do you take away from all that? What should America's priorities be, Philip, moving forward?
When you think about maybe the 5 or 6 things that we mentioned, we have to get straight. We all know this. And all the polls showed that, get the border straight, get the cities safe, take care of Iran, embrace capitalism, open up, deregulate, make sure taxes are fair for everybody. There's so many things that are just the basics, Adam, that America needs to do. And I think that the Trump administration, the way it's proposed so far, I believe that they're going to do what they say and say what they do. And those are some of the main principles of why President Trump was reelected again. So I think the country needs to get those things down. But then we got to look and say to ourselves, well, what else? Well, the one thing we do know is we must have a strong two-party system.
Right.
We know that there's extremes on both sides, and the only way we're going to course correct is if we have an opposite weight from each side. And the Democratic Party right now is not healthy enough to be that opposite attractive weight. And I think that will come about, God willing, if we move it forward. But we got to look at the economic inequalities. Isn't that really what it's all about? It's not about that you're Hispanic and you can't send your kids to college, or that you're Black and you want to start a business. It's that you're an American and you want the American dream. So it's got to be about, how do we help people achieve the American dream, whatever that dream is for you? that's what I think America's looking for.
Obviously, serving 2 terms as mayor of Miami Beach, you got a real taste of what it's like to run a city. And you made a study out of America's cities. You reference that as one of the things that is not working right in America. What should we do to make America's cities safer, better, more economically prosperous, and lifting everybody, as opposed to only those that can afford a $10,000 a month studio flat in New York City?
Well, I got to tell you, I think what Governor DeSantis did with the Live Local Act was very bright. He said, you're all whining and complaining about not having affordable housing in every one of your communities, but every time someone wants to build affordable housing, you stop them. You regulate them. You kill them with all the zoning. You don't let it happen. And the way the capitalist system works is you got to allow the capital to go in. You got to give them the opportunity. And he says, we're going to pass a law in Florida, which they did last year, or maybe it was this year they passed it, and they bypass. They go preempt all the local regulations and say, if you're going to build affordable housing, here you go. You can do it. And everyone with all the little communities in the cities were hemming and hawing and crying at the historic preservation boards. But you know what? It's a right way to attack the problem. If you can't do it locally, then they'll do it statewide. And I think that housing problem is a real problem for everybody right now, finding affordable housing. It's a big deal. But I think, again, Adam, it's about creating a level playing field, but it's about giving everyone the opportunity to play on that field. But it's not telling you who's going to win the baseball game ahead of time.
Right.
It's about saying you got a chance to get up at bat. It's up to you whether you can swing and hit. We're not going to tell you you're going to get around the bases just because you're Hispanic or you're Black or you're Jewish or you're gay or you're this or you're that. No one wants anything to do with that anymore. It's over. And the Democrats need to make sure they understand that quickly.
Well, it's interesting in Florida, where you are, in Miami-Dade, which for the first time in history went for a Republican for president.
And one of the biggest storylines is going to be the storyline that happened down here in Miami-Dade County. Likely you've heard about this. This has been, for years, a Democratic stronghold. Tonight, 55% of the vote in Miami-Dade County went to Donald Trump, just 43% for Kamala Harris. For perspective, if we go back to 2020, Joe Biden, 53% to Donald Trump's 46%. That still, at the time, was significant enough for Joe Biden to lose Florida by 3.4%. And this time around, when we have a double-digit victory, a large part of that can be credited to Miami-Dade County.
I didn't think we'd see that in our lifetime. As you recall, Hillary Clinton carried Miami-Dade by something like 25, 30 points.
Yes.
And now, not all that much longer, you have President Trump winning there. That I see Miami-Dade as a real melting pot of America, right?
No question.
And a real kind of measure of where America is and maybe where it's going to go. In a state that seems to be moving progressively red, is this inevitable, or is this something where the Democratic Party can actually do something about?
Yeah, I think they could do something about it. And I believe, listen, we lived through it. When Jimmy Carter got wiped out by Ronald Reagan, the Democrats were out in the desert. You had just Mondale and McGovern and Dukakis. And all of a sudden, this hillbilly from Arkansas showed up. And everyone said he's not even a Democrat. But what he did is he realized and he showed America that I am a Democrat, but I can bring us back to the center. And I know how to be pro-business and pro-law enforcement. But you asked a question which was so important about, what do we do in cities? And that's a very important question. Our system is set up in capitalism that if you just provide a safe, clean environment, private sector will do the rest. Mm-hmm. They don't need the government to do anything. But if you fail to provide a safe environment, no one will go to their offices. No one will shop in the stores. No one will live in the city, and that will fail. Provide a safe city, capitalism takes over. And I think that's a message for mayors that, how I believe. I can't stand people that have been in politics their entire life. It's almost like they just cannot seem to get a job. For some reason, they feel that being in politics that's it. It's like this crack cocaine they can't get off of. They lose one election, they go for another one. Lose that one, they get another one. And that's all they want to do. They just want to be in government. When what we do is we want people that have actually had that rare thing in the background called a job. I don't care what that job is, but that you didn't come from government. And bring what you learned to government. And a lot of these mayors that we've seen in these cities, they just grew up in the system. They can't get enough of this crap. And that's why Donald Trump won, because he's from outside the system.
Right.
And I remember when I ran for mayor, and you know this, Adam, I didn't get any endorsements. And I used to say, I don't want your endorsement. What do I want your endorsement for? I don't even think you're a good councilman. I don't think you're a good mayor. I don't think what do I want your endorsement for? And I remember we said, oh, careful, careful. No, no, no. But the people like that.
Right.
They want outsiders to step up and be authentic. And that's what Donald Trump was. And unfortunately for Kamala Harris, that's exactly what she wasn't.
Well, you have Donald Trump and his team that he's now putting together. If nothing else, Philip, they represent what the popular word is disruptors, right? Another way of saying it is they're taking on the system. So I don't understand why it's so difficult to grasp this idea. Americans are generally down on how things have been for quite a while. You see that in every poll, right direction, wrong direction. You see 70, 75% wrong direction. That says change. That signifies change in an election, a change election. This is a team that's coming in and they are promising like real change. I mean, not like incremental change, not like small change, like let's go at it. And that freaks some people out because change can be a scary thing, but it's exactly, it seems to me, what people are looking for. Am I missing something?
No, you're 100% right. I had this conversation the other day, Adam. If you get involved in a large company that's status quo, that's not doing well, that's not giving good shareholder value, and basically it's just like not doing great. Do you want someone to come in and be the CEO of that company to keep things going exactly the way they are? Right. Or do you want a disruptive CEO that's going to change the organization, make it better, make it more prosperous for everybody involved? That's kind of what the United States government needs, which, by the way, the United States Incorporated is the most complex, largest worldwide organization in the history of humankind. And people clearly are saying we want this disrupted. Now, I hope we don't disrupt it too much. You don't want to, what do they say? You don't want to, you don't want to break it. But we do obviously need to recreate and change various things. And I think there's going to be opportunities for Democrats of how to come back, offer another vision of a positive disruption to kind of get back on the map. And that will come. It's too early right now, right? I always say we're like in the 6 or 7 stages of grief. Mm-hmm. The Democrats right now are still in shock and disbelief.
Right. Isn't that stage 1?
Yeah, they're stage 1. They're shock and disbelief right now. But they're going to start coming to terms, and that's going to happen.
You're not just a Floridian. You're kind of a part-time New Yorker. I think a lot about New York as kind of an example.
Don't say it too loud. I don't want them to catch me for taxes because, as you know, every single person in New York who's got a couple of bucks has fled to Florida.
But I remember, you remember my history when Rudy Giuliani was mayor, who really was a disruptor. He came in and he said, we're going to fix this darn thing. And he took a lot of grief in the first 2 or 3 years. And then suddenly, oh my God, things started to work better. The city was safer. It was cleaner. People were happier. The economy prospered. There was choice in education. All these things that came into play against the hysteria that accompanied Rudy when he came into office. And yet now you see years later, several leaders later, and I'd say this is post Michael Bloomberg, who I thought was a tremendous manager of a lot of the things that Rudy had kind of begun there. He did a good job of continuing those. Can New York come back? Can one of the most important cities, and not the most important city in the world, get back to its better days?
I'll tell you something. I'm up there quite a bit. So I've seen where it was, where it is today.
But less than 6 months every year. So the tax authorities,
way less. No question about that. Bill de Blasio was by far, he won the award for the worst mayor in American history. Okay. Hands down. I don't think anyone will get close to him because he was absolutely the worst mayor we've ever seen for 100 different reasons. Then, of course, we've had Eric Adams. Eric had such promise. Things didn't go so well. And I know it's not easy in Eric's position. It's very difficult. I think the job got to him. He loved going out. He loved doing this. He wasn't hiring the right people. Unfortunately, if you don't put the right people in place, speed of the leader term is the rate of the pack, then you won't get anything done. One man can't do the job. But of course, leadership can change many different things. I really see that New York can. Now, what I was saying before is a few things would have to happen. Number one, they'd have to really get back and empower the police again, which could entail stop and frisk. All right. I know everyone's talk about it. Oh, my God forbid. No. It actually kind of worked for Giuliani and Bloomberg. Number two, they need to have a political lobotomy on their city council and state government. That governor needs to go. They need somebody else. She's part of the system. She's not disrupting anything, and she's no help to the city of New York, in my opinion. The third thing maybe would be a tax change to create a tax incentive to stop scaring people away with capital, but actually encourage them to come back to New York with all types of tax advantages to attract business.
Hmm.
The fourth thing, which will never happen, which would be a fantastic thing, is if somehow they can make Teams and Zoom illegal. Therefore, you have to show up in your office in New York City. But I don't think that's going to happen. So recently, I have seen a pulse. The patient was DOA. There's no question about it. But now when you go up to New York, you're feeling and you're hearing a heartbeat.
Let's go to the Middle East. Foreign policy is becoming more and more important to the future of America. And the Middle East has been a mess. I think you have decided views on that. But does America have an opportunity in that part of the world to maybe show the rest of the world kind of a revitalized game plan that I think we've been kind of drifting from for quite a while?
Yeah, I think so, Adam. And I think we have willing partners in the Middle East. Israel, we have an incredible new sheriff, which is really spreading their wings in a positive way in Israel. Saudi Arabia, that hopefully will join them in a partnership. The United Arab Emirates, which have already have diplomatic relations with Israel. And I think this is the basis of a formation. I really believe in my heart that we've let Iran run around unbridled. We do not want Iran to be a nuclear state. Israel, at great sacrifice, has done a hell of a job reining them back at great loss to Israel, hundreds of soldiers, these hostages, which are still there. I think I said this to you a while back. I always said that President Trump will be saying, "So help me God," raising his hand in January, and he'll get notification that those hostages have been released, God willing. Very similar to what we saw with Reagan in 1980. But it's time to clean up the Middle East. And I think the Abraham Accords are a great basis to move forward with.
You just invoked Ronald Reagan. Of course, he had a big doctrine, peace through strength. Is that one of the things that maybe Democrats should take a harder look at as opposed to running from?
Yes, I think so, Adam. I think that, the Democratic Party and Democrats in general are folks that they're looking for the best in you, and they're hoping that your better angels will prevail. But unfortunately, in the world we live in, it's not necessarily the case. So you have one side that's quite street smart and the other side that's quite philosophical and idealistic, the Democrats and the Republicans. But I think that the Democratic Party needs to portray a different sense of strength. And it's interesting, even during that convention, Democratic convention, you noticed there was a real patriotic theme being played through there.
Right.
It felt quite contrived.
Right.
It didn't feel like it was naturally coming. It needs to naturally come from the Democratic Party.
Clearly, the numbers bear this out that Democrats had a lot of unexpected losses among working class Hispanics, working class African Americans, the key word being working class, right?
Yeah,
It's another way of saying
sure.
middle class, right? Is that fixable?
The first thing Democratic Party needs to say is, we fucked up. We did everything wrong. We won't do that again. And they need to go through the various things we just talked about and say, we want strong voters. We like capitalism. They need to come out and say these things. And until they're able to say these things in front of their fellow Democrats, and that's going to take leadership coming up and saying that, they'll keep falling back into the trap. But I think it's fixable. But think about it, Adam. My in-laws, they came from Cuba. My wife's parents, they came from Cuba. They fled Cuba because it was a Castro socialist communist regime. Now, the folks that are coming into this country, let's talk about Hispanics. I can assure you, they're not coming here and they're going, God, we finally got to America. I hope we have a lot of crime on the streets in the cities because, we had great crime in South America. Now I want to make sure I got crime here. No, they're not saying that. Or they're not saying, Jesus, I love that socialist Maduro. Can we get more of that here? I know that I can't get milk that way, and I can't even get anything in the grocery store. Maybe America will do this. They're not saying that.
Right.
Do you think that they want their kids to be going to college with Hamas-supported terrorists on campus? When they see that chaos, they get PTSD from the countries where they're from. And that's what the Democrats don't understand. And they got to figure that out quickly in their heads. Maybe take a trip to Latin America to understand what Latins are about. And by the way, they're not all the same. They're not all the same. But the one thing they have in common is they want the American dream. So if you're against the American dream, guess what? You're not getting elected.
We're here talking at the beginning of the holiday period. You've been an amazingly successful entrepreneur in the cruise industry. How is the cruise industry doing? I know they obviously had some very difficult times during COVID. It seems like they come out of that period like roaring. Does that look very, very rosy, a very blue sky now finally for the cruise industry that's vital not just to Florida, but to the American economy?
The cruise industry is strong as ever. It's exploding. Inventory is limited. People are paying high fares. It's an amazing industry. And the reason why is because they give people a value proposition. Can you imagine you check into a hotel, a fantastic hotel?
Yeah.
You check in once, and every morning you wake up, the hotel moved and took you to a different place. So you actually don't have to move. The hotel moves for you. And you have the same restaurant, and you get lots of things to do, and it's safe and it's organized. And you can't believe the value you're getting. And the companies are so well run. Now, the challenge they had, like every other business, is that they had to take in huge debt in order to pay for their operations while they had no money coming in during the pandemic. And they didn't get any federal assistance because, as you probably know, these organizations are based offshore. They're shipping companies. They have flags of convenience. So they were not eligible. So they had to borrow money, and they're burning off that debt right now, but they're doing it incredibly strong, and they are as healthy and as powerful as they've ever been, better than they were pre-pandemic.
Through the course of this interview, Philip, Hansel and Gretel, your two Dobermans, have appeared in the background behind you.
No way.
They've been pacing, and maybe they're concerned about your answer to this final question. What are your plans moving forward? A lot of people look at you and say, oh my gosh, Philip Levine, as a Democrat, he's the mainstream, down the center line Democrat who could win in this environment. Do you have any plans, any conceptions, ideas, inklings of something that may be ahead? Or are you still very happy where you are with Hansel and Gretel and your children and your wonderful wife?
Adam, I have 4 kids, a wonderful wife. Thank God I have a great life. Love being an entrepreneur. To me, I'm not a politician. I'm an entrepreneur. I always laugh and said, I can get a table in 3 seconds before I ever became mayor. Then when I became mayor, it took me longer to get a table at a nice restaurant. So, for me, if the opportunity appeared and I felt like it was something that I fit, that I could contribute and do a good job and help the community or help the state, then I would consider it. But I really wish we had more people that didn't focus on running for office and instead focused on doing other things. And if the office opportunity, running for office, comes and it's right for you, you jump through the hoop and you do it. So like I always said, listen, I'm always open to everything. But do I wake up tomorrow morning saying, I can't wait to run for office? No, I don't do that. I don't do it, but I never say never about anything. And I love the state of Florida. And I think that, this state is the future. So goes Florida, so goes the country.
Well, Philip, I wish I were where you are now. I mean, we are coming to you today from Los Angeles. It's beautiful here. The sun's out. It's high 60s. I went to a football game to see the Ravens play at SoFi Stadium, which is like a man-made miracle of sports engineering. But it's funny to think back about the things you and I've shared when you were mayor and beyond in Miami Beach, and what you did in moving the needle, in pressing the envelope, and not accepting the status quo for what it is, for taking on the system and making it better. And I think that message, as well as what you penned the other day in the Miami Herald, is exactly what Democrats need to not only read, but understand.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate that. And, I always say government is the easiest business in the world to run. You don't have any competition. Your money, your revenue is guaranteed, and you actually don't have to make a profit. All you have to do is deliver a damn service. How hard could that be?
Apparently, it's very hard at times, right?
Yeah.
Philip, take care of yourself. Great to be with you.
Thank you, Adam.